the need to actually find an actual yoga master is one of the most critical things that a serious student must seek to do in order to be delivered a proper understanding of these yoga texts and to be guided in their practice, their spiritual practices. The ancient rishis and yogis, they had a very unique perspective of the world, completely different than the common person. The common person sees many things and assumes many things to be factual, when in fact much of the so-called truth that they accept is in fact illusory and incorrect. A very powerful example is the idea of who I am. I can remember giving some courses one time in a school, and so did a little test. You have the students write on a piece of paper, answer the question, who am I? Describe yourself, who are you? And so everybody gets to work and they write down, a whole number of things, and by the time I collect them, it's like the end of class. So I use this like an example. Okay, I come back to the class the next day, and I'm confronted with a bunch of traumatized students. Not because of answering the question, but something kind of tragic has happened. Like, if, for example, one of their classmates was killed in an accident on the way home, and one of the places I was actually speaking was in a Catholic school in a university, first year, and so in that university they had a chapel, and as is the tradition in the Philippines, they would have like an open coffin, and you've got this body presented there. And so in the classroom, someone says, "Oh, sir, Jennifer, she's dead. She's left us. She has met an accident yesterday on the way home." And they say that they're having a service for her in the chapel a little later, and they bring me there. So, being a wise guy that I am, unfortunately, I pull out Jennifer's little piece of paper, and it describes her name, and she says, "I am 5'3". I am a female. I am a Filipino. My complexion is brown. I have shoulder-length straight hair. My eyes are dark brown." And we've got a whole list. I weigh this certain weight, whatever it's going to be. So I'm looking at this, and then you can go over to the coffin and take a look in and check off each one of these things, and it's all still there. So then, you say, "Okay, don't panic. Everything is okay. Jennifer's still here. She hasn't gone anywhere. You said she'd left. It's all right. There's no problem." And so they're looking at you like, "Wow, what's happened to this guy? He's flipped out. He's crazy." But the question really is who is crazy? Who is crazy? This person has described themselves, and yet when we look into this coffin, there is simply a dead body there. And everybody, they understand instinctively that there has been this radical transformation. In the moment of death, you'll see the body becomes extremely unpleasant. You know this or not?
Yes.
Have you ever handled a dead body?
Same.
I mean, it's one thing if it's a relative. If you have to handle a dead body of someone that you don't know, it's quite disturbing. It's disturbing, and you have this deep sense of uncleanliness. If you've had to handle a body and help somebody move it, and then somebody was going to hand you a sandwich, it's like, just a minute, I'll wash. And it wouldn't be just one quick rinse. It'd probably be really, and then somebody's going to pass it to you, and it's kind of like, do you have like a tissue or something I can put on that? And the idea of death is extremely disturbing. The body becomes actually quite, I'm going to use a strong word, repulsive at death. Even if somebody is deeply in love, for instance, a husband and a wife, deeply in love with each other, supposedly, let's say they really are, and then the one partner dies, and the other person feels very disturbed by it. But they could not spend the night in bed with this dead body. And if you attempted to, you would be considered like a freak. Really weird. You would be really weird. And maybe if you were so mentally unbalanced and disturbed because of what's happened that you decided to do that one night, certainly by the next night you'd probably be thinking twice. There are the occasional nutcase that you read about that, you know, preserves a husband or a wife and keeps them at home for years, but people have this innate sense that at the moment of death, the body loses its attractiveness and becomes something that is somewhat repulsive even, or very unpleasant. It's just become very disturbing. The ancient sages, they talked about death in a way that is something we're not so familiar with. Like in the West, and what's become common all over the world now, what's the first thing they do with a dead body? They refrigerate it, and then they pump it full of chemicals and preservatives. And if you don't do it, it's really an amazing experience, especially in a tropical climate, to watch a body like 12 hours, 15 hours, 20 hours after its death. I mean, have you ever seen anything like this? It's really astonishing. The body begins to bloat, like seriously bloat, like you couldn't imagine it could get so big. And then fluid starts leaking out of the nose and the eyes and the mouth, and it's the anus. It's just like, it's really gross. And my experience was when I first went to India, I was living out in an ashram in a place called Mayapur in Bengal, and there was the Bangladesh war. There were like 10 million refugees that came across the border. And so it's like every train station was just filled with people sleeping on the platforms, and the railway tracks were used as the bathroom, so there was piles of stool everywhere, and there's flies and disease and poverty, and people that came from really, you could see, genteel background, you could see by the type of clothing that they had, were now reduced to incredible poverty. And every day you see people dying. Like, you cannot imagine how many people you see dying, and it's just like shocking. And so what they would do, if you go to ride the train in the morning to go from Calcutta up to Krishnanagar, you'd come out, and when you get near the train station, you see these little lamps. They've got like a little clay dish with a wick on it, and it's burning, and burning oil. And they put them out beside any dead body, because there's this dump truck that comes by at about 5 in the morning, picking up dead bodies. And a couple of guys swing it like this, and then whoosh, up on top, and there's somebody else there. And it's a mountain of incredibly bloated dead bodies. This is the hardcore reality. This is really experiencing death in a way that a lot of people do not have the opportunity to do, and it's quite an eye-opener, to say the least. You get to see the reality of this moment of death and the consequences, what happens, at least in relation to the body. So if we ask the question, what is it exactly that is the difference between a dead body and a live body? What is the difference? This question is the foundational question for really what yoga and what self-realization is all about. But what is the difference? I mean, somebody's going to say, well, one of them moves, the other one doesn't. Well, what if it's in a coma? If a person's in a coma, they ain't moving. Are they dead? And the answer is no. So, okay, that doesn't do it. Now, what is it that's this distinctive difference between a live body and a dead body? And to make it easy, we'll reduce it to one word. This word is Purusha, which actually means the person. Many people have ideas, like you see, it's very common in Christianity, within different religious denominations and different religions. There is this kind of like very vague concept of the soul. But if you ask people what exactly the soul is, it's kind of like, this, really, it's a serious unknown. What is the soul? So I really don't like actually using the word soul because it is so misunderstood. The Sanskrit word is Atma. The Atma literally means the self. The self. So the body is never really considered the self. The person that resides within the body and temporarily uses the body is the actual self. The body does not have personality. Personal expression, individuality, it does not actually arise from the body, even though the body is, each body is quite different from each other. The real individuality comes from the Atma itself, from the actual living being, or we might call it the spirit soul. I mean, we put those words together because some people have a very vague idea of spirit, some people have a vague idea of soul. There is this idea that many people have that the soul or the spirit is kind of like the energy source. And that is true, but it's also not a very good way to understand things, because most people think of an energy source as being impersonal. A battery is an energy source. Does anybody want to hang out with a battery? Go to a movie with a battery? Sit down and discuss some wonderful novel that you've read with a battery? It's not going to go very far. So it's just like, you see on these TV commercials, what is it, the Duracell or whatever. They got this bunny, this rabbit with a symbol, and it lasts forever. It just goes on and on and on. But if you take the battery out, then the toy kind of falls over and it's sort of like pretty useless. And you look at the battery and you go, wow, that looks pretty useless too. But if I put them together, wow, now I've got something. So there is this misconception that it is actually the combination of the Atma and the body that gives you a person. That is actually completely erroneous. Completely erroneous. The body, by nature, is impersonal. You want to check out what a body is like? Okay, watch when somebody dies. Let's not cremate that guy or bury him or pump him full of formalin or refrigerate him. Just put him out on the grass and watch what happens. There is no personality there. There is nothing attractive there whatsoever. Yet, we will see that almost everyone, the vast, vast majority of living beings, are completely covered by this idea that this body which I have on and I'm temporarily using is me. This is me. And I relate to the world. I seek happiness. I seek fulfillment. I seek love. I seek all of these things through this medium and in relation to this medium. This is one of the greatest tragedies ever. It is the most sad, it is a desperately sad and tragic thing that people are completely caught up in this idea. The actual saintly persons, the great yogis, the spiritual teachers, their hearts are simply overwhelmed with sadness just by gazing out upon the world and seeing the way in which things are moving, seeing the way in which the living beings are completely lost, taking this idea of this current life as total reality. They have a completely different perspective. They have a completely different view of things. And this process of spiritual realization, the process of yoga, is for the purpose of bringing a person to the platform of coming to realize their actual spiritual identity and to begin to live another type of life, a life that is not simply meant for death, but a life that is filled with spiritual purpose and tremendous fulfillment.